Assalamu alaikum, very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Perceptive Learning Zone, and I'm your host, mentor Hamza Nasser. And today's video is basically it's about a book review. It's a review on this great book that I had the good pleasure of reading recently, and I would highly recommend it to you, ladies and gentlemen. So it's basically called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, and it is basically written by John Gray. And in the previous episodes, we talked about the divorce rate and how it's rising in Pakistan and how relationships are breaking down in terms of communication. So this book for me, it happened to be a very good practical guide for improving communications and getting what you want in your relationship. So today, I will just talk about some of my learning experiences from this book, and I would once again very highly recommend you to get this and start reading it. Now, let's introduce this book. Now, we mistakenly assume that if our partners love us, they will react and behave in certain ways. The ways we react and behave when we love someone. Now, when men and women are able to respect and accept their differences, then love has a chance to blossom. When men and women are, I would say, a man's sense, fellas, of self, his sense of self is defined through his ability to achieve results. And to offer a man unsolicited advice, it is to presume that he doesn't know what to do or that he can do it on his own. Now, when you talk about a woman's sense of self, it is defined through the feelings and quality of her relationships. So, generally speaking, when a woman offers unsolicited advice to a man in order to help him, she has no idea of how critical and unloving she may sound to him. Now, many times a woman, just wants to share her feelings about her day, and her husband, thinking that he's helping, he interrupts her by offering a steady flow of solutions to her problems. Now, when our partner resists us, it is probably because I would say, we have made a mistake in our timing or approach. A man wants to make improvements when he feels that he is being appreciated as a solution to a problem rather than as the problem itself. To feel better, being a man myself, I can definitely relate. To feel better, men go to their caves to solve their problems alone, whereas women, they get together and openly talk about their problems. For example, when having a conversation with a man at home, it seems as if only 5% of his mind is still available for the relationship, while the other 95%, it is still at work. And often for a man, the inevitable release of tension that occurs at the completion of any sporting event like the recent FIFA World Cup or news event or movie, it provides a release from the tension that he feels in his life. So just as a man is fulfilled through working out the intricate details of solving a problem, a woman similarly is fulfilled through talking about the details of the problems. Next learning experience for me when reading this book was how to motivate the opposite sex. Now, men are motivated. This book says that men are motivated and empowered when they feel needed. Women are motivated and empowered when they feel cherished. Given the opportunity to prove his potential, a man expresses his best self. And it is only when he feels that he cannot succeed does he end up regressing back to his old selfish ways. And not to be needed, it is a slow death for a man. A woman's tendency to be compulsive, it relaxes as she remembers that she is worthy of love. She doesn't have to earn it, ladies and gentlemen. She can relax, give less, and receive more. Yes, women, they need to set limits. You often hear that saying in life that some people give us hell. That is wrong. We allow certain people to give us hell. Women mistakenly assume that having needs has turned the man off, when in reality, it is her hopelessness, her desperation, and her mistrust that has ended up doing so. When she wakes up and remembers her needs, then I feel like he also wakes up and wants to give her more. And a man's deepest fear is that he is not good enough or that he is incompetent. And just as women are afraid of receiving, similarly, men are afraid of giving. And it is difficult for a man to listen to a woman when she is unhappy, or I would say when she is disappointed or feels like a failure. And many men, they have talked about this before also, that many men, they do not have successful role models while they were growing up. For them, staying in love, getting married, and having a family, it's as difficult as flying once you have crashed the plane a few times. Or, it's like flying a jumbo jet without any training. He may be able to take off, but he is sure to crash. And, if you witnessed your father crash, then the probability of you crashing goes up as well. So, without a good training manual for relationships, it is easy to understand why many men and women they give up relationships. They give up on relationships. Now, the next part of this book is about speaking different languages. What do we mean by this? So, it says in this book that to fully express their feelings, women assume poetic license to use various superlatives, metaphors, and generalizations. Now, the number one complaint women have in relationships is I don't feel heard. Even this complaint is misunderstood by men. The biggest challenge for women is correctly to interpret and support a man even when he is not talking. Women need to understand that when the man is silent, in other words, he is saying, I don't know what to say yet, but I'm thinking about it. And when a man is silent, it's easy, fellas, for a woman to imagine the worst. Never go, there's that saying in life that you never go into a man's cave or you risk being burned by the dragon. It is very difficult for a man nowadays, especially, to differentiate between empathy and sympathy. He hates to be pitied. A woman should not be judged for needing his reassurance, just as a man should not be judged for needing to withdraw. When misunderstandings arise, we gotta understand that as couples, as husband and wife, as brother and sister, we speak different languages. So we gotta take the time necessary, my dear fellas, to translate what your partner really means or wants to say. Next up, this in this book, Mr. John Gray talks about the fact that men are like rubber bands. So what do I mean by this saying? What do we mean by this, that men are like rubber bands? So when the men pull away, they can stretch only so far before they come springing back. And when a man loves a woman, periodically, he needs to pull away before he can get closer. Yes, you see cyclic processes, they dictate everyday existence. Same goes for relationships. So a man pulls away. Why? He pulls away in order to fulfill his need for independence or autonomy. A woman may need, conversely speaking, a woman may need more time to regain the same level of intimacy, especially if she felt hurt when he pulled away in the first place. Now, a man automatically alternates between needing intimacy and autonomy. To a certain extent, I feel like a man loses himself through connecting with his partner. When he is available, instead of asking him 20 questions or demanding that he talk, she should let him know that she appreciates him even if he just listens. Also, when a man gets too close and then doesn't pull away, common symptoms are increased moodiness, there are irritability, there are passiveness as well as defensiveness. Now, this natural cycle in a man, this may already be obstructed from his childhood. He may be afraid to pull away because he perhaps witnessed his mother's disapproval of his father's emotional distancing. And such a man may not even know at times that he needs to pull away. And this kind of man, he naturally develops more of his feminine side, but at the express, but at the expense, sorry, of suppressing some of his masculine power. The man should grow to understand his own cycles and must reassure the lady that when he pulls away, it's only temporary and that he will be back. Also, Mr. John Gray in this book talks about the fact that just like men are like rubber bands, similarly, women are like waves, they ebb and fall. So they rise and ebb. So a woman's self esteem, it basically rises and falls like a wave, like a sinusoidal cycle. So when she hits bottom, ladies and gentlemen, it is a time for emotional house cleaning. Yes? To expect her loving nature to be constant, it is like expecting the weather never to change, or it is like expecting the sun to change, to shine all the time. In relationships, men pull back and then get close, while women, they rise and fall in their ability to love themselves as well as others. When a woman doesn't feel safe to go into her well, she becomes numb and I would say she becomes unable to feel her love. When negative feelings are suppressed, what happens is that positive feelings they become suppressed as well. And love it ends up dying. And there was a study that I was checking out recently. It revealed that a woman's self-esteem it generally rises and falls in a cycle between 21 and 35 days. So, men they argue for the right to be free, whereas women they argue for the right to be upset. And men they want space, whereas women they want understanding. By supporting her need to be heard, she could end up supporting his need to be free. It puts fellas, it puts too much pressure on a man to make him the only source of love and support. As a woman's financial, when you see poor couples bickering, you often feel like they're complaining because of money. But studies show that as a woman's financial needs are fulfilled, she becomes more acutely perceptive, she becomes more aware of her emotional needs. And just as a glass of water, philosophically speaking, just as a glass of water can be viewed as half full or half empty, when a woman is on her way up, she sees the fulfillment of her love. Now, on the way down, she sees the emptiness. And whatever emptiness she overlooks on the way up, well, that comes more into focus when she's on her way down into her well. So, yeah. Next up, talking about this book talks about the different emotional needs of men and women. So, the woman needs caring, whereas the man needs trust, number one. Number two, the woman needs understanding, whereas the man needs acceptance. Number three, the woman warrants respect, whereas the man necessitates appreciation. Number four, the woman requires devotion, the man needs admiration. Number five, the woman requires validation and the man needs approval. And last but not least, the woman needs reassurance, whereas the man needs encouragement. To quote Wolfgang von Goethe, that corrective action is necessary, but appreciation and encouragement is more important. Oftentimes, we see a lot of jealousy in relationships, and we need to understand the very first murder on this earth, right, of Adam's son. It happened on account of jealousy, but jealousy should be eliminated from ourselves. Islam is all about resisting our natural desires. इंस्टेड इंसान को अल्लाह तबारक तआला का बड़ा शुक्र अदा करना चाहिए कि उनके पड़ोस में, उनके घर में, उनके मोहल्ले में, उनकी विसिनिटी में, उनके वर्क प्लेस में कोई ऐसे साहब या साहिबा हैं जो मेहनत करें, जो अपना 100% दे रहे हैं, who are basically inspiring that person to bring out the best in himself or herself. Yeah. So many women, they try to help their man by improving him, but they unknowingly weaken him or hurt him. And the secret of empowering a man, fellas, is never to try to change him or improve him. The best way to help a man grow is to let go of trying to change him in any way. Then comes the next part of this book that is all about how to avoid arguments. Now, just as communication is the most important element in a relationship, arguments can be the most destructive element. Most couples start arguing about one thing and within 5 minutes they're just arguing about the way they're arguing. I've been in those positions with my wife multiple times. So then in this book, Mr. Gray talks about something called the 4 F's for avoiding hurt. Now, what are these 4 F's? Number one, fight. You see, when a conversation, quintessentially speaking, when a conversation becomes unloving and unsupportive, some individuals, they instinctively begin to fight. They immediately move into an offensive stance. And their motto is, the best defense is the strongest offense. And intimidation, we need to understand, especially for men, it is always gonna weaken trust in a relationship. The second F is called flight, and this also generally is applicable to men. Now, men may retire into their caves and never come out. This is like a Cold War, sort of speaking. They refuse to talk, and nothing, I repeat, nothing gets resolved. They walk on eggshells in a relationship. The short term gain is peace and harmony, but if issues are not being heard, then resentments will automatically be there. Now, the third and fourth F's, they are fake and fold, and this typically applies to women on average. Fake means to avoid being hurt in a confrontation. The person pretends that there is basically no problem, and she sacrifices or denies her wants, feelings, and the needs in order to avoid the possibility of conflict. And then fold means that rather than argue, the person gives in. Yes, they will. Someone says to me, "Nasser Saab, today the sky is purple." What does Nasser Saab say? Yeah, you're right, homie. You got right, soul brother. My man, cuz the sky is definitely purple. Praise the Lord. Now, what's your mentor Saab doing in this case? He is folding, right? They take the blame. They assume responsibility for whatever is upsetting their partner. In the short run, they create what looks like a very loving and supportive relationship, but in the long term, these people, they typically end up losing themselves. Now, what we need to understand over here is that men rarely say that they're sorry because, that basically means they've done something wrong and they're apologizing. Most arguments, they escalate because a man begins to invalidate a woman's feelings and she responds to him very disapprovingly. The most common way women unknowingly start arguments is by not being direct when they share their feelings. In beginning of a successful relationship, a man is still, I would say, a man is still in need of a woman's good graces. He's still, what's that saying? He's still her knight in shining armor. But, so he receives the blessings of her approval and as a result rides high. But as soon as he begins to disappoint her, he ends up falling from grace. And he loses all her approval, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, the man is cast into the doghouse. One critical pair of problems from which arguments arise is that the man feels that the woman disapproves of his point of view, as the woman disapproves of the way the man is talking to her. And men are most prone to argue when they have made a mistake or have upset the women they love. And I feel like sometimes, as I've experimented with it myself, sometimes the best solution for avoiding conflict is to see it coming and to end up lying low for a while. Then the next part of this book, it's all about, scoring points with the opposite sex. So what does that mean? You see, when a woman keeps score, no matter how big or small the gift of love is, it scores 1 point. Each gift has equal value. To a woman, a single rose, yes, it gets as many points as paying the rent on time, per se. Women have a love tank that is similar to the gas tank of a car. It needs to be filled over and over and over again. And there are many ways to. Now, men generally think, that just because they have given a class, a university lecture on occupational health and safety, and they've come back strolling in the evening totally tired and disoriented. They've already scored 500 points with their misses, but in reality, all they get is 1 point. That's the thing. So, how do you score more points with your wife, with your soulmate, right? You could practice listening and asking questions for starters. Maybe you could offer to build a fire in wintertime. Maybe you could put the newspaper down or turn off the TV while she talks to you and give her full attention. This is a big problem nowadays. The man comes back from work and his wife waits the whole day for a man to come back so she can spend quality time with him. And instead of giving time to his spouse, all he does is, he plants his ass in, sorry for my language, all he does is he plants himself in front of the TV and he zones out for the next 3 or 4 hours. This is a big sin, in case you didn't know before, and it's a major sin in Islam. You could perhaps offer to carry the groceries every once in a while. You could offer to drive the car on long trips. You could bring home the lady's favorite pie or dessert, whatever it is. So the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, most men now, they strive for greater and greater success because they believe it will make them worthy of love. And if a man has made a mistake and feels embarrassed, sorry, or ashamed, then he needs to love her more. And remember, the bigger the mistake, the more points they are to give, the more points they are for taking. Now, the next part of this is, how to communicate. I would say difficult feelings. Okay. So, whether you share the feelings in your letter or you just write a letter to feel better, writing down your feelings is an essential tool. Writing a love letter, I would say, it expresses your feelings of anger, sadness, fear, regret, and love. And writing a response letter, it expresses what you want to hear from your partner. You should share your love and response letter with your partner. Response letters are the best way to teach a man about a woman's needs, and in some cases, even vice versa. And whenever you are writing these letters, you have to consider the answers to some difficult questions. Yes? For example, how do you get your kids to listen to you without yelling or punishing them if your family yelled and punished you for maintaining control? Okay? How can you admit your mistakes if you are afraid of punishment and rejection? How can you accept your partner's imperfections if as a child you felt you had to be perfect in order to be worthy of love? How do you open up and trust your partner if the first people you trusted with your innocence betrayed you in some way or the other? And more importantly, ask yourself that how are you supposed to communicate your feelings lovingly and respectfully if you still haven't had 18 years of practice without the threat of being rejected and abandoned? And ironically, I would say, fellas, that as per my experience, 31 years of existence, yeah, the very act of avoiding our negative emotions, it gives them the power to control our lives. Books can inspire you, which is the whole purpose of me doing this book review. Books can definitely inspire you to love yourself more, to make you realize that the lover is also the beloved, by listening to, by writing out, or totally expressing your feelings, I would say that to grow in our ability to receive love, to grow in our ability to love others, we need to receive love as well. And when you take time to listen to your feelings, you are in effect saying to this person inside of you that you matter, gentlemen, and you deserve to be heard. And guess what? I care enough to listen. Next up in this book, we talk about how to ask for support and end up getting it. Now, I feel like this is a paradox. Yes? How is this a paradox? Because you see, when you feel safe with your partner, your deepest fears have a chance to surface. And when they surface, you become afraid and I would say, you are unable to share what you feel. Now, women's motto is that love is never having to ask. If a woman is not asking for support, a man usually assumes that he is giving enough. When a man hears a demanding tone, no matter how nicely you phrase your request, all the man ends up hearing is that he is not giving enough. Yes, and the tendency is then to give less until you appreciate what he's already giving. So work on the timing. Have a non-demanding attitude. Yes, and you have to facilitate your man. You see, it's not easy. I mean, outside he has to deal with the scrap traffic. He has to bear his condescending boss. He has to bear an entitled client or customer. He has to keep up with his nagging kids. So if you start acting like a what shall I say? If you start acting like a sore loser, right? That's going to be difficult. So be brief, be direct, and make sure you go for correct wording. When asking a man for support, assume that he doesn't have to be convinced. Men are much more willing to say yes, ladies, if they have the freedom to say no. And when a man grumbles, it is actually a good sign. He's mulling over it. He is trying to consider your request versus his needs. And one of the key elements of assertive asking is to remain silent after you have asked for support. When you ask a man for support and you do not reject him for saying so, he will remember that, and next time he will be much, much, much more willing to say yes. And also, Mr. John Gray in this book talks about the 90-10 rule, that 90% of our conflicts are related to the past, not to the present. So, how do we reflect on this book, and how do we apply to our society to mend relationships between the opposite genders? Yes, I would say in 2026, family courts over here in Lahore, they have recorded a significant volume of marital breakdowns, with nearly 2,000 khula cases, that are wife initiated divorces, are reported in Lahore alone. So these rising local statistics, they mirror a broader national trend that is driven by economic inflation, changing urban family dynamics, and heightened legal awareness among younger couples. And I would highly recommend this book, once again, like I said, to all struggling couples out there. Education theory, it states that to learn something new, we need to hear it 200 times. We also need to unlearn what we have learned in the past. We are not innocent children learning to have successful relationships. We have been programmed by our family, by our culture, by our own painful past experiences. And integrating this new, I would say, wisdom of having lovely relationships, it is a new challenge. So to the dear viewers and listeners, I would say you are a pioneer. You are what shall I say, you are traveling a new territory, so expect to be lost sometimes, by gradually releasing your judgments and blame, and persistently asking for what you want. You can create the loving relationship that you want, that you need, and you deserve. Yes. And ultimately, I would say, for healthy male female relationships in our society, especially in the Islamic community, the fear of God, the love of God, has to be ingrained in us. Gold will melt, money will burn, but you, sir, you, madam, carry the everlasting and mysterious breath of God inside of you, and that can never be taken away. God's love is, subhanAllah, it's like a healing balm that can mend your soul and reignite the spark of faith inside of you. In that book I read, The Secrets of Divine Love, it says that our real homes are not the homes we grow up in, but the homes of our soul, which are built from the brick and mortar of divine praise. इंसान चलते चलते अल्लाह का शुक्र अदा करे, चलते चलते सुबहान अल्लाह, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, अल्लाह अकबर, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, अस्तगफिरुल्लाह, वला हौला वला कुव्वता इल्ला बिल्लाह, जो है दरूद शरीफ जितना हो सके वो पढ़े. So you see, our journey on earth is not just to God. It is from God. It is with God, and it is into the love of God. You cannot separate love from God any more than you can separate water from the ocean. And God, if God can see the black ant that is crawling on the blackest rock on the darkest of nights, then how can he not see the struggles of a faithful seeker and repenter? So understand that for all those couples who are in a state of despair right now, understand that God sends hope in the most desperate moments. Don't forget that the heaviest rain, fellas, it comes out of the darkest clouds. And C.S. Lewis, he once said that, and this goes especially to the atheists out there. C.S. Lewis once said that a man can no more diminish God's glory by refusing to worship him any more than a lunatic can put out the sun by scribbling the word darkness on the walls of his cell. I remember one of my favorite sayings one of my favorite verses in the New Testament. a man once asked Jesus, "O good master, what must I do to get to eternal heaven?" And Jesus said to the man, "Why do you call me good? There is no one good except God alone." Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 18 of the Bible. So, our lives, they depend on the proximity of the earth to the sun, the tilt of the earth, the speed at which it revolves, the amount of oxygen in the air, the existence of our atmosphere, the thickness of the earth's crust, and countless other equations that sometimes have to be as precise as 120 decimal places. Yes, فَبِأَيِّ عَلَىٰ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Indeed, which of the blessings of your Lord will you deny? It's scientifically proven that you can fit 1.3 million Earths into the sun, fellas. There are stars out there that are millions of times bigger than the sun. Millions of these stars, they form a galaxy. And they are not millions, not billions, but zillions of galaxies. Yes? And after these galaxies, you have the that's the universe, right? Then you have the first heaven, then the second heaven, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and the distance from the first heaven to the second heaven and so on, from the second to third, is like 500 years as the bird flies. And then comes the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, comparing the heavens and the rest of the universe to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet ﷺ once said, it's like throwing off your ring on the floor and like comparing the size of the desert to the size of that ring. And then comes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So one of the angels that carries the throne of God, the distance between his earlobe and shoulders is 700 years. It's beyond the imagination and comprehension of finite beings like you and me. So, Ahi, as far as God is concerned, we are, smaller than an atom crawling on an anthill. So remember, your problems are very minuscule in the grand scheme of things. Never let this moment be your identity. Never let your present situation be your final destination, because just when a caterpillar thinks its life is over, it turns into a butterfly. And Albert Einstein said this, that not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that is counted, well, it really counts. And I will conclude this session with that saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Bani Israel, which makes, so whenever you are engulfed in problems, just be grateful and reflect on everything that God has given you, despite your shortcomings. And our Lord says that indeed we have honored the descendants of Adam and have transported them on lands and sea, and have given them good things as sustenance, and have made them superior over many of our creation. Chapter 17, verse 70 of the Holy Quran. So may the good Lord confer a plethora of blessings upon all of you. Thank you very much, fellas. That'll be all for now. I'll be back with more episodes, God willing. Please don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe. To your host, mentor Hamza Nasir from Perceptive Learning Zone. I wish you all the best and keep rocking. May God be with you always. Assalamu alaikum.